Okay, and Andrea, take it away.
Sure thing. Thank you so much. And for everybody here, super grateful that you're in our room. Our breakout room is called The Convenience Economy and the Shopping Cart of America. We're going to have a conversation today about the current storage economy that we have, and hopefully by the end of it, collectively push ourselves to imagine past it by thinking through a variety of questions. My name is Andrea Vidaurre. I'm a policy person and organizer here at the People's Collective for Environmental Justice. I just really quickly want to pass it to two of my colleagues and comrades who are on the call so that they can introduce yourselves. Dee and then Brenda.
Hey everybody, my name is Dee Arellano. I'm a member, also a member of Peace Edge.
Hi everyone, my name is Brenda Soto and I'm also a member of Peace Edge. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you so much. So we also want to know everybody that's here. So if you guys can, in the chat, just put your name, the city you're from, your pronouns, and then in 2 words, describe what your city looks like. Just 2 words. What your city looks like. Anything that comes to mind. So that's going to be your name, the city you're in, pronouns, and then what city, what 2 words to describe the city that you live in and what it looks like. Great. I see some people going in the chat. City of my dreams. Love that. Sprawling, segmented. Okay. Oh, these are all good. Warehouse center. Blossoms and brick. This could be a really nice poem. Urban and busy. Desert incomplete. Manicured illusion. Oh, suburban sprawl. Lots of trees, no warehouses, blue skies. It's a city, it's a tree city, but lots of development, needs more pocket parks. Mountains and trees. Beautiful. Manicured, but sunny and birds. Oh, I love the use of the word manicured. Okay, great. This is good. Keep going. Full of potential or full OG potential, whichever one. Chewy, those sound good. Resilient. Very dry. Community. Light. Okay. You know, it's both whatever we make it, right? Perceived good or bad, but I think everybody, no matter what, is attached and is hopeful. So thank you. So really quickly to the next slide. So before we start, just want to open this up with some community agreements. Make sure that we're patient, that we're learning from each other, learning together, that we respect people, and we challenge ideas. There's always the option to pass. Keep your microphone off to reduce background noise. Please listen actively, provide feedback, open dialogue. And then this one, really important, right? Take space, give space, and then maintain confidentiality, right? I think everybody here needs to make sure that we do that. Okay, so really quickly to the first slide, D, while I just open it up. So the People's Collective for Environmental Justice, we're a community-based organization here in the Inland Empire. We are composed of impacted residents and workers in the region who are building this network of support for each other so that we can continue to build power, share knowledge, and fight against the environmental racism that we see in our communities, but also at the same time fight for something that we want to see in our communities. We called this breakout session the Convenience Economy and the Shopping Cart of America because we, through the years, have been using this term, have been creating these terms to kind of just express how we feel doing some of this work. So before I continue, we'll go to the Menti slide. We want to hear what folks think that the convenience economy means for you. So go on to that Menti. I'm going to actually drop it in the chat. It might be a little easier. Or you can go on to menti.com and go on to there and then start writing in the words that come to mind when you think of convenience economy. So go on to there, and then we're gonna have this light bubble that will be able to show up. And then Dee or Brenda, whoever's hosting on the Zoom, if you guys could just pull up what that's looking like. So yeah, a couple of words that come to mind when you hear convenience economy. Let's see here. Are we able to host that up? Are people able to get in? Okay, that's that one. I think you have to pull up the ones that, Okay. Perfect. All right. So we have some words populating, keep putting them in there. So convenience economy, fast, exploitation, rushed environmental stress, getting stuff cheap, carbon emissions, waste, so easy, sprawling warehouses, wasting resources, low paying jobs, unsustainable externalities, disposable, packing trash, Amazon, processed, impersonal. So yeah, we are all in good company then, because I think I'm going to be speaking to the choir. That these are a lot of the same words that we think about too when we're thinking about the convenience economy. And I think because this conference is about the new storage economy, we think it's important to kind of understand and relish with what's the current economy that we have so that we know what we need to take from it and what we need to leave behind. So Dee, if you could go back to the presentation, we'll just go into really quickly what we think the convenience economy is, which a lot of you already touched on, right? It's how technology, our culture, and our current system has made acquiring commodities simpler than ever. And I say commodities because sometimes it is needs, right, that the convenience economy gives us, but many times it's just commodities, right? Many times it's not basic needs that are met through this type of system. Instead, it's like the surplus and the excess of things. We're being sold this idea and accustomed to having stuff so easily that it's becoming part of a culture, right? That we can get things so easily at our fingertips, and the process of which it gets to us is more and more lost. So where our food comes from, where our stuff comes from, how our grocery stores are filled, all of those get lost, right? We are further detached from it because everything just becomes, it's really comes from a click of the button. And this is really happening in our communities. And a lot of communities have this economy, right? But not a lot of communities have the infrastructure of this economy in their literal backyards. And this infrastructure is the goods movement, right? The supply chain. And it's literally built inside of our community. So from Long Beach to East LA to San Bernardino to other parts of the United States and the world, we're part of this global supply chain's infrastructure. And I think for a long time, they try to normalize it and say, no, well, this is what is needed to make things go round. And we know from the histories and knowledge of the first people and the people that are still here, the native people of this area, the goods movement really replicates the trading routes that were already here. The difference is that the way that we have created trading routes and these supply chains is so extractive and destructive, right? nothing comparable to the way that the roots that the original people had in these same areas. And so the Inland Empire right now is the largest dry port on the West Coast. And dry port means that it's about 50 something miles away from the seaports. And it's this area that holds and stores and then redistributes goods to the rest of the country. So the Inland Empire right now is moving 40% of the nation's stuff, right? That's almost half of people's stores and shopping carts and food is all coming from this little pocket right here in Southern California, right? Almost half. You can imagine if stuff shut down for a day, how that would impact not just California, but the rest of the United States. And so this system that has been created here in a way is very vulnerable to breakups and congestions down the line, right? Something that I think we'll get to eventually about how sometimes this type of system is very unsustainable. And so when we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about the roads, the freeways, the warehouses, the rail yards, the airports, the trucks, the trains, everything that's used. And here, I think a lot of us growing up in the region have become accustomed to it. My family, their first and still jobs when they came to this country is in the logistics industry. It's one of the largest industries in our region, and it employs thousands and thousands of people. And many times for immigrant families like mine, this was an industry that they could come into and, be able to live in the Inland Empire. So we become normalized it, right? My uncles are truckers, parents are warehouse workers, but I don't think what happens is that we understand how massive it is. So right now on our freeways, we have about 20,000 trucks that drive on it a day. 20,000 diesel trucks are driving on these things every single day. And we have multiple intermodal freeways, intermodal rail yards, and also cross-country freeways. This is also creating this, phenomenon, right? Where the warehouses and the infrastructure is getting closer and closer into communities, encroaching them. And we put up these pictures specifically because this is a site that you see a lot actually throughout the different region. You see how they've gotten incredibly close to the point where it's people's literal backyards to have a warehouse that's bringing in day and night thousands of trucks. And this was all pre-planned, right? And planned without us. Which we hope is, a value that sticks throughout this. Really a system that came in to extract and based in profit, came in with the planning without us, right? All of this was a lot of state money, federal money that came into expanding the ports of Long Beach and LA way before the warehouses and stuff came into our communities. It's all pre-planned to make sure that this was going to be the industry that took over when a lot of jobs were lost to other parts of the world because of trading policy like NAFTA and other things. So we're going to go to our first question, one of our convening questions. And so we want to ask folks, what concerns do you have about the land use in the IE, and is it connected to the convenience economy? So we'll pull up the Jamboard and we'll begin writing. Dee, do you want me to do it or should I do it?
I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. Do you want to put the link to the Jamboard in the chat? Because I think that's how people will interact with the Jamboard.
Got it. Okay. Sure. Okay. So I'm going to put in the chat. Oh, here we go. It's already up there. In there. So, because we want to hear from everybody here, right? There were so many people that are at different ends of this convenience economy. And so we want to hear from everybody. So what concerns do you have about the land use in the IE? And is it connected to this convenience economy that we are discussing today? And Susan, could you give me a quick time check? I think you're muted.
I would say we have 35 minutes left, half an hour left.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so Ursula Schmidt, lack of green space. Yeah, so you can go in there, put sticky notes. Yeah, what concerns do you have in the IE? And if anybody feels any particular way right now, I would love for you to go unmute and maybe we can hear from one or two people on this question.
I'm
So
going to speak because I can't figure out how to do this on my phone. But since I was younger, my mom has been part of environmental justice groups fighting these warehouses popping up in my town. And I live close to the 15 freeway, and there are just warehouses all along the freeway. And this conversation is really, it's making me feel like I'm running out of time, because I know of two really big pieces of land that it's just inevitable. It feels like that eventually it will turn into that warehouse distribution type of use for the land. So this is getting me really inspired and excited, and it's time to do something now. Like, I can't keep waiting, that this is my purpose, to save these sacred lands.
Yeah. Oh my God, Christina, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel you on the being like, it's like a mix of like despair, but also excitement, right? Because it's, and also finding that there's so many other people, I think, in the community that feel the same way that you do. About what's happening. And I think today is a great convening, but then outside of this convening, right, there's spaces, I think, that to find support, because you're not alone, right, in wanting to do this. This is about like the future of our planet, and we'll get to it later, right? But this is it right now. It is superimposed onto our communities. We see it directly, but there are impacts that go beyond, right, our there. Thank you for that. Anybody else want to share like what concerns they have about the land use in the IE, and is it connected to this convenience economy that we have now?
I mean, just to add to what you're saying, Andrea, I think there's nothing that's not connected about it. Like, because of this cheap dirt narrative that has, it's basically, oh, you have cheap land and a lot of it, and you have, an undereducated population. There's only one solution economically for that, and that's warehouses. And that's been the equation that has governed land use for 30 years at least in this region, and it's not stopping. It's not stopping, and the growth of the convenience economy is the driver. If we could change that, then we wouldn't have these problems. But we're so tied into it. I think now most organizers and folks are like, well, the warehouses are here to stay. What can we do now? There's some comments in the chat. Lack of green space, increased pollution impacting health, especially for children.
Great. Yeah, no, thanks everybody for filling this in. I'm seeing pressure for farmers to sell out, lots of pressure, water overuse. As long as capital is the only metric, we're doomed. 100%. Negative impact on the ecosystem. People in the community not taking part in the decision making. Yeah, these are all concerns, right? And I see people touching on the concerns not only for their health, but also for like their power in the community.
Gwen Kirk in the chat is saying, or Gwen, nourishing food, clean water, community decision making.
Great. So this is all good stuff. Let's go back to the presentation. And let's have this discussion about who the convenience economy is convenient for. So in the chat real quick, who do you think this convenience economy is convenient for? A little bit of a rhetorical question, but yeah, everybody kind of think about it, right? It's convenient for corporations. It's convenient for the 1%. There we go. So yeah. Old rich white men, for everyone short term. Sometimes when technology makes you dependent on stuff, right, it is hard for us not to see that we are also part of how it might be convenient for, but we want to push past that. Busy people with the income to support the cost of easy convenience for our overconsumptive lives, all really good stuff. So maybe let's do one click. We'll go into some of the stuff that we think it's convenient for. So we'll start with this one, which is, this is a map about the zip codes, and it's a little small, I'm sorry about that, but it's a map with all the zip codes that shop the most from Amazon. And then the dots there are the Amazon warehouses. And then the dark red are the zip codes that shop the most from Amazon. So there's a very clear understanding that the folks that shop the least from Amazon are the ones that are getting the Amazon infrastructure that is the most dangerous and polluting. While the communities that benefit most from this type of system live the farthest from it. Yeah, Joyce, do you have a question? I see your hand raised.
I do. Hey, thanks for calling out.
Yeah.
So I want to really have a more balanced conversation or bring in a more balanced perspective and really look at ourselves, because I'm observing some of these comments, right? And to not be careful to be siloed in our thinking, and that we're stakeholders at the table of many, many different opinions, right? And so some of the competing uses for land use, whether it's agriculture, housing, warehousing, transportation, I ask ourselves, how many of us have used Amazon and ordered something from Amazon in the past week, in the past month? That's what the logistics provides for us. How many of us are paying what we believe too much for housing? And yet in Southern California and in our inland region, we need to build we are short 1.3 million housing units. And so when we talk about these things, we have to consider, how do we balance all this? Because those other aspects of the access to convenience, we benefit from all of that. Our grocery industry and our grocery sector benefits from that. So how do we balance these conversations so that it's a more resilient and more sustainable use of land uses, and be at the table to communicate this and find mutually and compromising benefits without maybe pointing the finger at others, because fingers, so I just want to have that, throw those ideas out there, that we have some also real challenges in other areas and that are very real and have an economic considerations to as well, that also impacts all of us, our pockets as well. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. No, thanks, Joyce. That's an important point. And, mentioned a little earlier, right, is that the way that these systems are set up in our communities, they limit the opportunities and options that we have. So many times this, especially when we're talking about a company like Amazon, who's a growing monopoly, who's in every single pocket, right? And they consume other businesses and other options that we have, and really being left as one of the only options, it is hard for us to find ourselves out of it. And sometimes it is the fact that we might have more privilege that we'd be able to shop outside of Amazon, right? Just to use that as an example. So I understand you. And actually to your point about kind of the other benefits and other challenges that we have, there's actually a couple more points that we want to bring up about convenience that might touch on that. So, and what we're really trying to show here is that the way that it's set up right now is unjust and it's unfair, and it's a system that does not benefit all of us. And how do we create a system that does benefit all of us? And to do that, I think we have to take a reckon with the fact that right now the system that's set up isn't fair for everybody. And we did a study recently about where all of these warehouse locations are located, and it's 80% of them are in communities that are minority communities, right? They're half a mile away from communities. Over 600 schools in this region are located half a mile away from warehouses in the community, which means that a lot of kids in the region, thousands of kids, are growing up right next to these diesel attractions. And lastly, that's the study, and we can link it later. But how we have all of these benefits, right? There's some convenience to it, but not some people benefit more from the convenience, and some people are actually getting a lot of the burden for perceived convenience. This third point, which I think is really important, is about the wage growth in this industry. So as with time, we've seen wages grow in other sectors. Comparably, warehousing and logistics has gone down, and we've seen actually more of a race to the bottom in all of the excessive warehousing, bringing wages down considerably, and actually now seeing that the wages provided don't help out with long-term sustainability, long-term social mobility in our communities. And I say this from somebody who has grown up with family in the logistics industry, and over time lost healthcare benefits, lost retirement benefits, and got stuck in this temp agency scam that a lot of these industries use right now, which keep workers at minimum wage, working sometimes very dangerous jobs at very low wages. And so when we ask who's this convenience economy for, we're trying to really break up the fact that there are some people that it's not convenient for, people that it is convenient for. So how do we level that out? And I'm going to pass it to Dee. I think she will have some thoughts on this as well.
Hi there, and I'm going to make this very quick because I know we have 10 minutes left and we've got another Jamboard after this. But if we couple this study that the students from the Redlands University, PSEDGE, and others collaborated on, we couple that with another study from USC, and we see that nearly a quarter of Californians who identify as Hispanic are unconnected or only connected through smartphones. And the largest digital inequity is among Hispanic people who only speak Spanish, with only 65% connected to the internet, while 25% have no connection and 10% rely on smartphones. We look at those percentages, and we also consider that low-income households often had to make trade-offs even before the pandemic started. Throughout the past year, many workers lost their jobs, either temporarily or permanently, which we may possibly know someone who has experienced that. And then we also look at Time magazine has also reported that people who are unbanked or don't have a banking account or credit card, African Americans make up 16.9%, Hispanics make up 14% of those households, and they are 5 times as likely to be unbanked compared to white households, which are 3% that don't have a bank account or a credit cards. So we start to look at all of the different ways in which we ask ourselves, the convenience economy is inconvenient for whom? And so I'll pass it back on to Andrea to talk about to finish up, and then also we have a Jamboard.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, let's pull up that Jamboard then, because we wanted to talk about who's it convenient for and who it's not, and a lot of you already answered it. But yeah, let's pull up the Jamboard, the second one. So you would go onto the right at the top. So you go to the second one. And the question is, if everything stays the same as it is now, what would the IE look like in 10 to 20 years? If we keep this culture, this mentality, and these people, and like people that are driving kind of this economy in our communities, what will happen, right? In 10 to 20 years, what do you imagine, right? If we continue to let this happen. And I promise this will get more uplifting as we get closer to the end of the workshop. Perfect. Segregated communities, don't live in the IE, but I worry that would be a lot of hard surface, high temperatures, impacted freeways, infrastructure, more people sick from the air pollution, more poverty. Yeah. We continue to like devalue this industry and devalue the workers, the land, the people in this area. We're definitely heading into this direction. Yeah, sure thing, Tracy. Great. So let's, for the interest of time, since we have about 5 minutes left, let's pop back up the presentation and we'll finish with some conversation about like, does it have to be this way, right? And do we have to let this happen? And to Joyce's point, right, we're all in different places, and we all are different stakeholders, and we all have the opportunity to contribute to a collective future that doesn't keep building off of the backs and the lungs of certain members of our community for the benefit of many, right? And so at PSEDS, this is one of our main tenets, right, is really moving past this idea of individualism and to this more idea of collectivism, right? Both in action and decision-making, working directly alongside our communities that are at the intersections of these identities and experiences, and also this idea of mutuality. So I'm gonna ask Brenda if you can hop on and just drop a little bit about your thoughts on this.
Thank you, Andrea. Yeah, so we have this concept of what is individualism versus collectivism. And we see that collectivism allows us in organizing spaces to address the needs of everyone in our communities, especially the most vulnerable. And when we think about collectivism, we think about not charity, but solidarity with the most vulnerable people in our communities. It also allows us to make sure that we're uplifting the voices of our communities and to not create monolithic narratives, because we know that every person has different experiences, different backgrounds, and with collectivism effort, we're allowed to organize and make space for everyone. Also, collectivism is the concept of not co-opting other movements, but instead making sure that the movement is intersectional, that we're showing up as allies in the spaces where we might not be directly impacted, but we're also addressing environmental justice, immigration justice, food justice, and all the things that affect our communities in the Inland Empire. Compared to individualism is the concept of addressing just one individual's needs. Sometimes individualism can be activism, right? We see that activism is oftentimes addressing the needs of just one person. But like I mentioned before, we don't have monolithic narratives that can address the experiences and backgrounds of everyone in our communities. With that said, I want to encourage everyone here to take action through collective effort, making sure that we're uplifting each other and showing up in solidarity with other communities.
Great, thank you so much, Brenda. And yeah, right, something we want to go beyond this idea. So we have this massive problem, right, in our region right now, and there are efforts to try and rein in the industry, to try to improve the wages, to improve the air quality, but that can't be done alone. And from our experiences working side to side with impacted community members, with labor unions that are fighting for improved wages, for worker rights groups, to community-based groups, we're understanding that when we work together in this holistic vision of what we want in our community for this industry, we're able to achieve those things. And as we're moving into a transitionary phase of hopefully cleaning up and electrifying the warehouses in our community, I do want to note out that even if we electrify everything, that is not the solution, right? That's not the Band-Aid solution to this idea that at the price of convenience, right, we hurt other people. And so we are really adamant about trying to restructure the way that our community in here in the Inland Empire is used for, and how can we create more local solutions that both cut down climate and air pollution. So some of the other breakouts today and the other conversations today are talking about those solutions. And I think it's really important to advocate, show up, and stand side to side with those alternative solutions that will use our land, our people, in a way that is helpful and beneficial to everybody. So we're going to put up the last Jamboard, and that question is going to be, what values should inform land use decision making now in the future, right? And I see already people are doing it. But yeah, how do we localize ourselves more? How do we break up this system of being dependent on exports and shipping pollution? And start to really find that like all of our needs can be met locally. So people adding on, this is great. Cool, and we have about 5 minutes left. So I would love to open up the space to just thoughts from folks. And we only have a couple of minutes, so maybe a couple people can go by, but love to hear maybe the ways that you have showed up for this collective type of action, right? And maybe ways that it has been beneficial and that you've seen improvements for your community here in the IE.
Feel free also to put comments or questions in the chat as we're winding up the session, or if you have questions for Peace Edge, they're here to respond, and we're here to listen.
Yeah, so the question still stands. Do folks have any examples of the ways that they've been a part of collective action that have brought small, big improvements into the communities?
Andrea, I don't want to take up space, but I do want to say that it's been interesting for me as the new director of the Conservancy to begin having conversations with people, like at all levels, from the grassroots to municipalities to the resource conservation district, just at so many different kind of multi-sectoral conversations. And I think people are having the similar conversation, that people all know that there needs to be a change, and it's just a matter of how we can put people more into the same room together. I think, as Joyce was pointing out, to bridge some of those divides in conversation, because I think everybody knows we have a problem, and when you put people into conversation together, it creates empathy for people's perspectives and like understanding of some of the challenges that maybe folks aren't even aware of. So we've got a few comments in the chat. So by supporting enterprises like On Common Good whenever I'm in town, value genuine community benefit and sustainable economy. Okay, there's proof of concept, converting clusters of residential yards into agriscapes. Design as worker owner urban landscaping business development model, so kind of clustering those things together. Collective local stewardship of water and land. And there's some great ones coming into the Jamboard question too. Go ahead, Andrea. Sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no. I was just echoing some of the stuff that people are saying. Wildlife habitats, setting and respecting max limits for development, community-based decision-making, tomar en cuenta la comunidad sobre sus necesidades, take into account a community over its necessities, consulting with the indigenous people. Yeah, all really good stuff. All values that we need, and we don't see enough. And I think the product is what we have now, right? This unfair distribution of burden. When you don't have these types of values, that's the product and the outcome. And I see Aaron Fox in the chat asking a question about the South Coast air quality decision on regulating warehouses. That is going to, if passed tomorrow, it will slowly require the warehouses to electrify, to bring in solar, to bring in charging stations, and hopefully to bring in high road employment so we can really raise the bar of the industry, an industry that is so profitable. But what's still left is how do we preserve land that is still here and create alternatives that aren't bringing so much traffic and infrastructure cost and health costs into our communities. We have another question about, we have CARB opening in Riverside. Why aren't we going to require health impact assessments for any projects to start calculating cumulative impact to air quality? Yeah, we do have CARB now. And so CARB plays an important role on statewide regulations. It'll be really important to see if CARB steps in on some of these local fights. Something that we've learned from our experience is that when it comes down to it, the ultimate decision makers are the people that sit on the dais. And so CARB and AQMD can submit, but we still have some more work there. And it looks like we're all done. I see new folks coming back on.